Humanity's answer. The Deep Space Monitoring Station 17, a high-security facility hidden beneath the Nevada desert, had seen its share of strange anomalies. But nothing compared to this. Technician Ethan Carter sipped his lukewarm coffee, his eyes fixed on the radar screen. It was supposed to be a routine night shift. Quiet, uneventful. The kind where he could scroll through old sci-fi forums and dream of a world where humans weren't alone in the universe. Then the alarm blared. A massive fleet had entered the solar system. Hundreds of unidentified objects, moving in perfect formation, like a tidal wave of shadows creeping toward Earth. Ethan's coffee cup slipped from his grip, shattering on the control panel. "Jesus," he whispered, scrambling to his keyboard. He ran a second diagnostic, then a third. No error, no malfunction. This was real. His shaking hands slammed the emergency alert button. Within minutes, the world changed forever. First contact. Across the globe, every major observatory confirmed the same readings. A fleet larger than any human military force had ever assembled was closing in. At no raid, military analysts worked frantically, calculating trajectories, speeds, energy outputs. Their conclusion: these ships weren't meteors, space debris, or friendly explorers. They were coming for Earth. In the White House Situation Room, the president sat surrounded by top military officials and scientists. The massive screen displayed live satellite images of the approaching fleet. Admiral Jonathan Reynolds, a veteran of countless conflicts, stared at the data. His voice was low, grim. At their current speed, they'll be in Earth's orbit within 6 hours. The room fell silent. Humanity had spent decades searching for extraterrestrial life, sending signals into the void, hoping for a response. Now the response had arrived, in the form of an invasion fleet. The president exhaled. "Can we fight them?" Reynolds hesitated. "Sir, these ships cross the solar system in days. Our most advanced spacecraft would take months to do the same. If they're hostile, then we're decades, if not centuries, behind them in technology." The room remained deathly still. Then, every screen on Earth flickered to life. The message. From Times Square to Tokyo, from smartphones to rural village radios, the same image appeared. A being stood at the center of the screen. Tall, unnaturally smooth-skinned, with luminous silver eyes that held the weight of 1,000 conquered worlds. Its long, flowing robe shimmered like liquid metal, and when it spoke, its voice was perfect, cold, and undeniable. "People of Earth," it began, speaking flawless English, flawless in every human tongue at once. "We are the Dominion, the greatest empire the galaxy has ever known. We have conquered 47 civilizations before you, and now we offer you the same choice we offered them." It leaned forward, its alien gaze piercing through every screen, every watching eye. "Submit. Become part of our empire. We will guide your species into an era of prosperity beyond your imagination." The voice lowered, like a dagger sliding between ribs. "Resist, and we will do what we have always done. We will crush you." For a long moment, the world stood still. Then the transmission ended, and all hell broke loose. The shadow over Earth. Panic swept through the streets. Stock markets crashed within minutes. People flooded supermarkets, emptying shelves, preparing for the unthinkable. Traffic jams clogged highways, families desperate to flee major cities. News stations scrambled, their broadcasts filled with fear. And above it all, the Dominion fleet hung in space, watching, waiting. Military bases worldwide went into full alert. Fighter jets scrambled, submarines repositioned. Every nation on Earth, no matter how divided before, now faced the same enemy. At the Pentagon, tensions ran high. Admiral Reynolds stood before a live feed from space telescopes, watching the Dominion ships. They were unlike anything Earth had ever seen, colossal, their surfaces shifting, as if their very hulls were alive. "They haven't fired a shot," Reynolds muttered. "They don't need to," replied General Ava Patel, head of Earth's Joint Military Response. "They're letting us drown in our own fear." She turned to the president. "Sir, if we surrender, they will rule us forever." The president's voice was cold steel. "And if we fight?" A long pause. "We lose." But then, something unexpected happened. The one-word answer. Deep within the United Nations headquarters, where world leaders had gathered, a single representative stood to address the Dominion's second transmission. This time, the alien leader appeared as a hologram, standing at the center of the Grand Hall. Its silver eyes gleamed, waiting. "Humanity, what is your answer?" Every leader in the room turned to one man. General Isaac Monroe, the decorated war hero, the last relic of Earth's greatest battles, stepped forward. His uniform was crisp, his eyes unshaken. He did not look to the others for permission. He did not hesitate. He simply spoke one word. "No." Silence. Then the hologram flickered. The Dominion leader's face, usually unreadable, twitched, as if in confusion. "No." It repeated. Monroe took a step closer, his voice like iron striking iron. "You gave us two choices, submit or die." He let the words hang in the air. "You forgot the third option." The alien's gaze darkened. "There is no third option." Monroe smirked. "There is now." Then, without waiting for a response, he turned his back to the hologram. Transmission terminated, and with that, the signal was cut. The world held its breath. In orbit, aboard the Dominion command ship, the alien trembled for the first time in its existence. Because in all its years of conquest, in all the planets it had enslaved, no species had ever said no, and meant it. The moment everything changed. Aboard the Dominion flagship, Supreme Commander Varax stood in complete silence. The holographic transmission from Earth had ended, but the final word still echoed through his mind. No. No hesitation. No fear. No diplomacy. Just defiance. This had never happened before. In all his years leading planetary subjugations, in all 47 civilizations conquered, not one had rejected the offer of submission outright. Most species crumbled the moment they saw the Dominion's fleet. They begged for mercy, bartered for their survival, or surrendered instantly. Even those who resisted did so in desperation, in terror, never in confidence. But humans, they didn't ask for negotiations. They didn't tremble. They simply said no. Varax felt something he had not felt in centuries. Uncertainty. A fractured Earth stands as one. On Earth, the world held its breath. The moment General Monroe had cut the transmission, every nation, every government, every man and woman realized the consequences of that word. They had sealed their fate. In the White House, the president turned to his advisors. "That answer just put us at war." Admiral Reynolds folded his arms. "We were always at war. We just didn't get a choice before." Across the world, governments scrambled. Nations that had been at odds for decades opened communications. Alliances formed at speeds once thought impossible. The entire world military machine mobilized. Defenses activated, and war councils convened in underground bunkers. But everyone knew the truth. They weren't preparing for a war they could win. They were preparing for a war they refused to lose. The first strike. Aboard the Zerith-class battleship Scourge, Captain Zycol stood at attention, awaiting orders. His ship was positioned at the vanguard of the Dominion fleet, a fleet so vast that its mere presence blotted out the stars. A voice came over his neural communicator. It was Varax himself. "Initiate Phase 1. Show them why resistance is futile." The order was absolute. Zycol nodded and turned to his weapons officers. "Prepare the planetary bombardment." His crew responded with deadly efficiency. From high orbit, the Scourge powered up its primary energy cannons. The weapon systems hummed with an ominous rising frequency. The first planetary strike in human history was about to be unleashed. But then, everything changed. The counterstrike. In the Nevada desert, deep beneath a classified military facility, General Patel and her team monitored the incoming Dominion assault. "They're charging weapons," one technician reported, his voice shaking. "Impact in less than 3 minutes." Patel clenched her jaw. "Deploy Project Revenant. Now." The order sent a shockwave through military command centers worldwide. The world had been preparing for nuclear war for decades, but in the face of an alien invasion, Earth's top scientists had been working in secret on something far more dangerous, something not even the Dominion expected. Within seconds, Project Revenant was activated, and for the first time, humans struck first. The sky burns. At Edwards Air Force Base, a fleet of experimental X-99 hypersonic strikers shot into the sky. Their pilots, handpicked from every air force across the globe, had trained for this single moment. These weren't just advanced jet fighters. These were weapons built in absolute secrecy, designed not for human war, but for a war with an unknown enemy. As the Dominion battleship Scourge prepared to fire, the X-99s breached the atmosphere at speeds that shattered the sound barrier 10 times over. The first squadron launched their payloads, classified weaponry that didn't exist on any public record. Within seconds, the Dominion's primary weapons system malfunctioned. "What?" Zycol hissed, watching as his ship's targeting matrix glitched, scrambled, then collapsed entirely. Then the human counterattack hit. Missiles tore through the atmosphere, impacting the Scourge's weapons array with surgical precision. Explosions rippled across the hull, sending fireballs into the vacuum of space. For the first time in Dominion history, a planet had preemptively struck a warship before it could fire. Zycol's heart froze in his chest. This was impossible. No species had ever countered a Dominion strike. And yet, before his very eyes, his warship, one of the most advanced in the fleet, was losing to an enemy that was supposed to be primitive. "Reroute power. Repair the weapons grid," he barked. His officers scrambled. But then, the second wave of human retaliation hit. And this time, it wasn't just fighter jets. The hunters turned prey. From hidden bases across the Pacific, Arctic, and the Siberian tundra, experimental orbital disruptors activated. These ground-to-space railguns, once dismissed as military theory, fired with devastating precision. The Scourge took another direct hit. Its shields collapsed. The warship, once a symbol of unstoppable Dominion power, was now bleeding fire into the void. Zycol staggered, his claws gripping the command console. He looked at the screens, his mind reeling. The humans had crippled a Dominion battleship before it could fire a single shot. For the first time since the invasion began, the Dominion fleet hesitated. Varax watches in silence. From the Dominion's flagship, Supreme Commander Varax watched the battle unfold. What was supposed to be a display of absolute power had turned into something far more dangerous. The humans had done the impossible. They had taken the first shot. They had damaged a Dominion warship. They had countered advanced technology they should not have even understood. And most importantly, they had no fear. Varax's mind raced. This was no longer a conquest mission. This was a mistake that could cost them everything. Earth's answer was more than just words. Back on Earth, military commanders received reports of the Dominion's hesitation. For the first time, they realized something incredible. The Dominion had expected surrender. They had expected Earth's submission. They had never expected a fight. And now, the humans had given them one. Admiral Reynolds looked at the president. "Sir, they're hesitating." The president nodded. "Then let's make them regret ever coming here." In that moment, humanity knew the truth. They might not win, but they would make the Dominion bleed. And for the first time in Dominion history, their prey had become the hunters. The prey that fights back. The Dominion fleet had come expecting submission. They had prepared for planetary conquest, not war. But now, the impossible had happened. Humanity had fought back, and struck a Dominion warship before it could even fire. In the cold abyss of space, where the Scourge drifted in flames, the reality of the battle had shifted. For the first time in Dominion history, a planet had wounded them first, and Supreme Commander Varax was watching. The silence before the storm. Aboard the Zereth-class command dreadnought Tyrannus, Varax sat in his war throne, his body utterly still. The high command of the Dominion invasion force stood in silence around him. They were warriors of an empire that had never lost, an empire that had dominated the stars for thousands of years. But now, the holographic projections before them told a different story. The Scourge was critically damaged. Human aircraft had engaged and survived. Orbital disruptors, weapons the Dominion had not anticipated, had crippled one of their finest warships. And worse, the humans showed no signs of surrender. One of Varax's advisors, High Strategist Kelver, finally broke the silence. His dark, angular features were tense, his claws tapping against the command console. "This cannot be happening," he muttered. "The Scourge should have obliterated them before they could react." Another officer, Warbringer Zotor, his battle armor gleaming under the golden light of the war chamber, slammed his fist against the table. "Their technology is primitive. How is this possible? How could they have anticipated our attack?" Varax remained silent, his mind a storm of calculations. The battle should have been over. The humans should have been crushed under overwhelming firepower, but they weren't. They were still fighting. And now, they had the initiative. Earth's unrelenting defense. At Edwards Air Force Base, the success of the first counterstrike sent shockwaves through military command. General Ava Patel stared at the live feed from orbit, watching as the Scourge struggled to regain control. She exhaled sharply. "We hit them." Across the room, Intelligence Officer Marcus Doyle ran a hand through his hair. "Not just hit them. We forced them to stop." Admiral Reynolds, standing near the situation map, narrowed his eyes. "Then we can't stop now." All eyes turned to him. "We caught them off guard. That means they don't fully understand what we're capable of." He pointed at the tactical display, where the Dominion fleet loomed over Earth. "That gives us an opening." The president, watching through a secured line, spoke firmly. "What are you suggesting, Admiral?" Reynolds didn't hesitate. "We take the fight to them." A ripple of shock went through the room. Patel leaned forward. "Are you saying we should attack their fleet?" "I'm saying we must." Reynolds turned to the president. "Sir, if we wait, they'll regroup and hit us harder. But right now, they don't know what else we have. We need to keep them guessing." The president's face was unreadable for a long moment. Then, finally, he nodded. "Then let's make history." The fire in the sky. The second wave of human counterattacks began before the Dominion could react. From hidden launch sites across the globe, dozens of railgun platforms, designed in secret military programs, came online. Their massive tungsten rounds, each the size of a car, were fired with such force that they tore through the atmosphere at hypersonic speeds. The Dominion ships weren't prepared for such an assault. The Scourge, already wounded, took another devastating hit as a railgun round pierced its lower hull, shattering critical support structures. More shots followed, slamming into the flanks of the Dominion fleet, forcing their defensive shields to flare with overexertion. At the same time, squadrons of X-99 hypersonic strikers rose into the sky once more, weaving between the falling debris, their pilots determined to do the impossible, fight gods with mortal hands. Within minutes, another Dominion warship took damage. This was not supposed to happen. The invincible fleet was bleeding. The Dominion's response. Back aboard the Tyrannus, Varax finally spoke. "Enough." The single word resonated through the war chamber like a death knell. The officers stiffened. The Supreme Commander's golden armor glowed faintly, his bioenhancements pulsing beneath his skin. He had conquered dozens of worlds, annihilated empires, crushed rebellions before they could even begin. He had never been forced to speak this word before. Varax turned to his warbringers. His voice was calm, controlled, but beneath it was something deadlier than rage. Cold, absolute determination. I do not care what weapons they use. I do not care what technology they have hidden. He leaned forward, his silver eyes flashing. End this. The fleet obeyed. The sky burns. From the heart of the Dominion fleet, the retaliation came. A barrage of gravitic destabilizers, weapons powerful enough to rip apart entire battleships, rained down upon Earth's defensive positions. Orbital disruptors exploded, taken out by pinpoint Dominion fire. Human forces scrambled, their ground-based defenses struggling against the sheer magnitude of the assault. In high orbit, the Dominion warships began their full descent. For the first time, humanity saw the true scale of the enemy. The Dominion wasn't just here to conquer. They were here to eradicate resistance completely. And yet, as the sky burned with fire, the human pilots, soldiers, and commanders refused to break. Because this was not the end. This was the moment humanity proved they were not prey.